United States President there wrapping up his first State of the Union address. Brendon O'Connor from the US Studies Centre joining me, Kieran Gilbert in Sydney. Brendon, what did you make of the address? The President, as expected, said jobs the number one focus in 2010.
I thought it was a very good speech, competent as always, but it wasn't a great speech. There was a bit of a laundry list of things that he was promising. There was an attempt to have this kind of overview at the end where he described why change hadn't been maybe as easy as some on the campaign trail hoped. But I thought overall it was Bill Clinton-like in some regards. It reminded me of Clinton's promises that he made after the setback in '94 of a series of activities that government might chip away at and be able to achieve. And I think some of them did echo going back to Clinton themes such as pay-as-you-go in terms of funding new programs.
And in terms of that spending freeze as well, which had been flagged before the State of the Union, and he delivered it. A spending freeze for 3 years from 2011, excluding the security budget and Medicare.
Yes, it had a little bit of the Bill Clinton 1996 State of the Union address where he said the era of big government is over. I think Obama wants to give this impression that he's not a big spending liberal, that he's responsible, that he's going to take the deficit very responsibly. But I don't know where he's going to get the money from at times. I think he's got to think more about maybe some tax increases, not just on some of these Wall Street banks. But this was something he initially promised, that he'd get rid of some of the Bush tax cuts on the very wealthiest in America, but I think he's been reluctant to push that theme in his first year or so.
Well, that was something he said that there would have been nothing more he would have liked to do, but other than to cut back the deficit. But he said, with the risk of another depression, things weren't normal when he arrived in the White House. Do you think that referring to that and referring to the history and the fact that the debt levels were high when he walked through the door of the White House, that was an argument that I suppose will go down well with the American people?
Yes, I think he was trying to remind people that there was this thing called the stimulus package, which he was, which had a lot of different bills and ideas in it. And he was trying to say this stimulus package had worked, that it had done lots of good things, that it was a success, that there were lots of people's lives who are better as a result of it. And I think that story's somewhat been lost this year because it was such an amalgam of ideas, and no one set of ideas actually kind of emerged out of that stimulus package to say, well, this was a great thing for the country. So I think he was trying to revisit that early part of his presidency and say, look, I did something major to get out of a terrible crisis, and there's been a lot of benefit that's flowed from that, but we've got to have more benefit in the terms of jobs, and small business seems to be the vehicle that he wants to promote job creation through.
Yeah, announcing a number of tax breaks for small business and so on. And he said he wants a jobs bill on his desk without delay. So, as we mentioned, that is his big number one focus for 2010. But the other big issue of recent times in terms of the reform of the first year in office was healthcare. And as he said, the health insurance reforms, he didn't choose it because it was good politics, certainly not, and not because it would be an achievement, a legislative achievement under his belt, but because of the importance of it. And he urged Congress not to walk away from the reform of health when they're that close to it.
Yeah, this is a very live moral issue for him. His mother was dying and she was struggling to pay her health bills, and the insurance companies weren't saying they were going to cover certain things. So I think it's a personal issue, and I think it's one he's personalised in the debate, saying, look, families are worrying all the time that they won't have the proper health care that they need if they strike an illness, that this is a moral issue, that people shouldn't be left in the lurch in that regard. And I think that argument, unfortunately, hasn't been able to win the day, or there's been so many complications within making that moral argument into legislation, with various states wanting kickbacks and special deals, that the messy business of legislating, which the Congress does, has really held this up. And it was a very delayed process that went on last year, and one that I think maybe Obama will live to regret, and maybe the Democratic Party will live to regret, because it will be much harder this year to pass anything.
Overall, though, when you look at the weight of this address, it went for well over an hour, that the focus was on bringing the economic debate back to middle America, wasn't it? After the bailouts, after the stimulus package and so on, the focus was trying to bring it back to middle America, to the middle class and to small business, for example?
Yes, job creation. I suppose that would be a message that will go across well. All families are probably touched by someone who's unemployed or holding on to their job very narrowly. So I think that message is a wise one to go with. The opinion polls show that unemployment, that economic insecurity are the really big issues in terms of the public's concern, that healthcare has really slipped down to only about 50% of the public being concerned, and then lots of them would have different things that they're concerned with. I think costs in healthcare were a huge issue for many people, but I think his bill, the healthcare bill of his party in the Congress, didn't maybe address cost as much as it might have. And I think this is still one of the issues that kind of lingers over him, of how is he going to get this health coverage bill through without maybe addressing this issue of costs.
On the issue of security specifically, one controversial area, he said that he will be working with Congress to repeal, in his words, the law that denies gay Americans the right to serve the country they love because of who they are. Were you surprised by that?
I think it had been flagged in a lot of the commentary beforehand. It does take us back to 1993, and we revisit the Clinton administration again. I mean, he tried to obviously get healthcare reform through, which Bill and Hillary Clinton were unsuccessful at promoting. Now he's going back to one of the first issues Clinton dealt with, gays in the military, which Clinton was criticised for bringing on too early, and it led to a back down by the Clinton administration. So I'd say it is more than nearly 10 years on from that period. You could say times have changed to some extent, that people are maybe more open on these issues in a way that they weren't at that stage in 1993. So it would be interesting. No doubt will engender a lot of controversy from very conservative Christian conservative Americans who'll take this I think issue right up in the debates that will ensue.
It's interesting in terms of the culture of Washington. We heard a lot about this from the president in the election race, and then today he says we have to recognise that we face more than a deficit of dollars right now. We face a deficit of trust. That was very much in line with what we'd expected. Did you think he hit the right mark in that regard?
I think it's a familiar theme for Obama. I mean, it's a theme of George W. Bush's even, that you've got to be a uniter in Washington, that you've got to get over the old business of lobbyists and backroom deals running the show. But as much as people, I think, want to hear that, it's often very hard to translate that into a politics where the president somehow can change the entire culture, because Congress legislates. The president just suggests. They're the great persuader in many regards. So it's in many ways one of those things you expect from presidents, but very, very hard to change the tone when politics is so dependent on just so many more people than one person who can deliver these types of speeches.
Okay, well, in terms of the national security issue, Brendon, there wasn't a great deal of focus on that tonight, a little bit on Afghanistan, a little bit on that attempted terror attack on Christmas Day. Did you expect more on that front, or was the balance about right there? I
think if I heard him correctly, he said all combat troops will be home from Iraq by the end of August this year, which is a significant pledge. That will, there'll still be other troops that aren't deemed combat troops who I think are there, but that suggests that campaign promise will occur, that within basically 2 years of coming in office, less than 2 years, that he'll be able to, they'll be able to bring troops home from Iraq. I think it might be suggestive that in the second year of his term, he'll want to focus more on domestic issues, on the economy, on jobs, and with this issue of Afghanistan that took up so much of his time in the latter part of last year, maybe moved in some ways, at least attempted to be moved onto the back burner, or at least not prioritised in the way that it seemed to take up so much of his time in 2009. So I think in some ways it might be the opposite to what we expect at the end of a presidential term, where the president turns very much to the domestic front, and international matters, I think, will in some ways play second fiddle this year.
Brendon O'Connor from the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney, thank you very much for your time, your analysis and thoughts today. Thanks.
My pleasure.